We keep the stories by giving the stories to people who take them and give them again. In the circle of tellers, the circle of listeners, who become the tellers of stories that circle the heart like old friends.
It's a story from Russia. There once was a little boy, and he lived in a small village in Russia with his mother. And his mother worked, and so he went off to school to stay all day while she worked. And while he was at school, his teacher had him draw a picture. And so he drew a picture of a blue sky with the sun up in the corner. And his teacher said, "Oh, that's a beautiful picture. Would you like me to put a name on the picture?" And the little boy says, I have some words that I want you to write for me. And so the teacher listened to the little boy and wrote the words on the picture. And he took the picture home to his mother. And his mother looked at it and she says, "Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much." And then she read it aloud and said, "Put sveda, budjet sunset. Put sveda, budjet niba. Put sveda, budjet mama. Put sveda, budu ya." And years later, those words were set to music, and choirs all over the world sing this song. May there always be sunshine. May there always be blue skies. May there always be mama. May there always be me. And that's a story from Russia.
This story is from Hungary, about an old woman who ended up by herself. And she spent all of her time working and saving money and working and saving money and working and saving money. She had a little farm kind of off by itself. She was so afraid she would run out of money before she died. She worked and saved and saved. One day she was sitting in her house eating breakfast when the door opened up and Death walked in and said, "Come on, it's time." And she said, No, I don't want to die." What she really meant was, "I don't want to leave my money." So she started arguing with Death. Could she have another 10 years? Death said, "No." Another 5 years. Another 3 years. Death held up his list and said, "Look, lady, I got this list. Your name's on it. Come on, let's go." Well, she kept arguing with Death and trying to ask for more time. And Death finally said, "Look, I will give you 3 more hours." 3 hours? I can't do anything in 3 hours. Could you at least come back tomorrow? I mean, Death had to haul away some really high-maintenance people over the years. My God. And finally said, "Okay, I will be back tomorrow." And she said, Could you write that on the door? Just so I'm sure. Death took out some chalk. He went to her front door. He wrote the word "tomorrow." And he said, "Okay, there you go. Tomorrow. I will be back and you are going with me." And she said, okay, tomorrow. So the next morning, she was sitting at her table eating breakfast. Death opened the door, walked in, and said, "It's time, let's go." She said, in the door, written in your handwriting, I might add, "Tell me what that word is." And Death said, "Tomorrow." Clearly, you had to come back tomorrow. So Death went away. The next morning, she was eating breakfast, the same thing. Death came in. She said, "Where are you the door?" "Tomorrow." You had to come back tomorrow. Death was not exactly the brightest bulb in the box. I'm just saying here. You know, because she was able to pull this on him for several days. Finally, Death looked at her, looked at the door, walked over to the door, wiped all the chalk off, and he said, "Okay, the word tomorrow is no longer written on that door. When the sun comes up one more time, I will be back and you're going with me." Death went away, and the old woman knew it was true. She pulled that trick with the word tomorrow enough times. She had no more tricks to pull on death. Tomorrow he would be back, and she would die and be taken away. When the sun came up the next morning, and she was so frightened. She didn't want to die. She thought she could hide. And she was running around her house looking for hiding places. She hid in the pantry. No, he looked there. And she hid under the bed. And she thought of the big barrel of honey she had. And she got in that barrel of honey and had just her nose and face sticking out. No, that wasn't good enough. He would find her there. And so she got out of the barrel of honey and hid in the feather bed. Oh, you would never think. Well, and she was so frightened that she got out of the feather bed, and she had feathers stuck on her from the top of her head down to her toes, including all over her whole face. And she decided she would find a hiding place outside, maybe out at the barn. So she went stumbling out the front door, trying to find another hiding place. And Death was walking up the road right then. Yeah, this is going to be simple. Pick up the old woman, head on down the list. He'd finally get this one taken care of. As he got closer to the house, he saw something coming out of the front door. He didn't know what it was because he'd never seen anything like this before. They hadn't told him about this kind of stuff. He had his list, and that was all he knew. Death got so frightened by that, whatever it was he saw walking out of the old woman's door, that he turned and he ran off. And he was too frightened to ever go back to that old woman's house to pick her up. The last I knew, she was still living in that little house, working and saving money and working and saving money, and living life just the way she pleased. And that story's called Death and the Old Woman.
We keep the stories by giving the stories to people who take them and give them again. In the circle of tellers, the circle of listeners, who become the tellers of stories that circle the heart like old friends.